Hello and good morning, friends. Welcome back to another exciting day in Empires and Puzzles. And with it comes a brand new portal. But real quick, before I get into the Shadow Summon, I just want to point out that they put this really cool pickup summon in here today with Costume, Melina, and Lando. I mean, what's up with that? That's an awesome pickup summon. All right, but back to the topic at hand. We have a brand new Shadow Portal, and with it comes this really cool looking Cassilda. She is going to be a blue sorcerer. I have to say, I really appreciate the art on this. Like, I was kind of like, oh man, this is pretty cool. The runes in the background and the floating book and the pages that look like they're magically turning. Pretty cool stuff. All right, so being the sorcerer class, of course, if she takes special skill damage, she has a chance to cast that mana delay on your opponents, so that's pretty cool. A reminder of what we get for our family bonus here. We do get the Forsaken family, and there is a bonus for 1, 2, or 3 heroes, and it will be critical up and health. So we get 15, 20, 30% critical, and we get 20, 30, 40% health. So some pretty good bonuses. Even by herself, she gets a standard 15% crit and 20% health bonus, which can definitely help her be a little more survivable than some other characters. Let's continue to look at what we have here. All right, we also get the Eldritch Pact passive, which is pretty normal for these guys, but a reminder, they did do a change fairly recently, so let's see if they go over that here. If defeated, this character has a chance to be reborn as an Eldritch host. The chance is 10% per 10 insanity on the character, up to a maximum of 100%. The Eldritch host has 100% inherited health, 1200 attack, 1200 defense, and the following special skill, Eldritch Blight, which will deal 400% damage to the target and inflicts 35 insanity on them. Now, what's important here is that in this Eldritch form, they do not put insanity on themselves anymore when they cast their special. That was the change that went into effect. It doesn't necessarily say that, but I thought I would bring it back up. So that is actually kind of a cool change. If this character defeats themselves while activating insanity, the chance to be reborn is always 100%. So perhaps that is the reason why they no longer put insanity on themselves, but still it is very interesting. Okay, so down here in the Aether Power department, we get Counterattack. Counterattack is a fairly middle-of-the-road Aether Power. It's definitely not bad, but 60% counterattack for the first 6 turns. It's not a ton of damage. What I find it does do, though, is it makes people hesitate in attacking your character right away, because they might choose to hit one of your other characters that doesn't have counterattack up, so it creates a deterrence to doing damage immediately to this character. All right, and then down here in the Specials department, we get Discordant Incantation. Sure. Okay. Operating at average speed, we're dealing 325% damage to the target, so a sniper hit. The target succumbs to fear for 4 turns. Now, a reminder of fear, because there's not a lot of characters in the game with this ability yet. The target gets negative 40% defense. It removes all dispellable buffs and growth effects when a fear status is added. The target cannot gain new buffs or growth effects for the duration. Target with fear does 160% damage to a random ally each time any other ally casts their special skill. This character can trigger this effect only once per turn. So, kind of an interesting setup, right? So you stop them from being able to get buffs, you give them defense down, and they can't get growth effects. So this character is obviously a pretty good counter to the temple heroes out there that are just trying to stack growth each turn. Fear will help eliminate that. So, I don't know. I'm still on the fence about fear. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of different. So, all right, so there we go. That's fear. And then it also is going to deal 275% damage to 5 random enemies. Okay, now we're getting somewhere that's going to get interesting. All hit targets get 10 insanity every time they are hit, okay? And all hit targets cannot activate their talent skills for 4 turns. Huh. Inflicts 45 insanity on the caster. All right, man, look, the reason I paused is just because there's a lot of interesting mechanics going on with this character, which is going to make fights very chaotic. So let's go dig into it, right? So what do we get out of this character? One, we get a fairly reasonably strong, like sort of stout and somewhat tanky damager who does a specific sniper hit which you can control the fear for. So it was very important that they allowed you to target something, right? You want to be able to control which one gets the fear effect. So we like that, right? And then you think that, like, oh, well, 325 at average is not a really great hit. You're right, it's not. But then this character also follows up with 5 more attacks at 275% each. 5 is a lot. 5 is a real lot of additional hits. You're also inflicting 10 insanity with each of these hits. So basically, you're putting out 50 insanity across the opposing team. What I don't love about this, though, is that you're spreading that insanity out among the 5 hit targets. So instead of putting a focused concentration of insanity on a single character where it's more likely that they're going to flip their special, you're spreading it out across a whole team, and it's much easier to get it healed off that way. So I'm going to chop up the random hits with the insanity as a con, instead of a pro. I mean, it's not necessarily terrible, but I would prefer to put that focused insanity on a single target. And then also, it says that all hit targets cannot activate their talent skills for 4 turns. This is an interesting little quirk. So a reminder of what they're talking about by talent skills. This is not their special attack. Your talent skill, as you can be reminded, will be right here under the talents tab. In this case, they are a sorcerer. So it says, if this character is dealt any damage by the end of the turn, 15% chance to activate the following. Drop the mana generation of the target by 50% for 2 turns. The target gets negative 20% attack for 2 turns, right? So, basically, that's a talent skill. So all of them that are hit will not be able to activate their talent skill for 4 turns. So you'll shut down fighters from resurrecting. You'll get rid of Cleric's mana shield that protects them from spells and effects. Monk's ability to resist 50% of the time, you can shut that down as well. So there's a lot of interesting things that can be done by shutting down the talents. It's not an ability that we see very often, so I do think that's cool. There's no negative side to shutting down your opposing party's talents. Okay, I just don't know if it's game changing, but it's cool. And you can shut down as many as these hits hit. So you could in theory get all 5. I mean, odds are not, because that would require you to have your random hits hit all 5 of them. So most likely that's not going to happen, but it could. And in reality, if you're into a fight and a couple of people are dead already, you're probably shutting down the remaining 3 as they're hit by 5 random hits or whatever the case may be. So that's a cool effect. The inflicting 45 insanity on herself is tough. But I think this is the same for all of these heroes. They inflict a fair amount of insanity on themselves. So the very next time you cast, you already have to worry about whether or not they backfire. I always like to think of using insanity heroes using, have you ever watched those racing movies where they're like, oh, you know what, we're gonna hit the NOS and then we're gonna speed past and get that victory, right? Well, I think of insanity heroes like using NOS in your car. You have to use them. You get a pretty good advantage up front for that first special, right? You get a pretty cool effect. You can affect their team with insanity, etc. But what it does is it creates a timer, right? There's a ticking timer now on your side that if you don't wrap that fight up within a certain amount of time, you're going to come back, and the negative effects of using that NOS or the insanity is going to come back and bite you in the butt, and then you're probably ending up killing yourself by mistake. So, you really have a window of opportunity that they create to finish out the fight, and you got to do it within that window, or it's probably going to end poorly for you. So that's kind of where insanity heroes land. So where do I judge this character? Well, I think they do a lot of interesting things. I should note that since they are a multiple hit target, you can take this person versus the Titan, and you will be doing 6 hits to the Titan from 1 special. The one thing I will warn you about is if you take insanity to a Titan, remember, eventually you could end up reversing your specials on yourself and ruining the end of your Titan hit again. So there is that side of things. But I do think she's a viable Titan hero, especially if you utilize the use of items to maximize damage for minimal turns. I think this character is very viable in that situation. But if I was playing out as many turns as possible in my Titan strategy, I think taking an insanity character is probably not the best way to go. All right, so overall, I'm going to rate this character an 8 because I think she does some very cool things with shutting down talent skills, and 6 hits is pretty cool too. So yeah, there you have it. I'll give her an 8 because I do think you can use her. I do think you can make her viable. And if you pull her, congratulations. All right, so thank you everyone for tuning in. If you do like what I do, go ahead and hit that little button at the bottom there. I am on my own little journey here to see if I can get myself to 1,000 subscribers. I've been working with Empires and Puzzles. I think it would be really cool if I could convince them to let me hand out a promo code. I've never gotten to do that yet, and I think that they'd be at least open to the idea if I can show there's traction. They're already putting me pretty much on their news feeds every time, so I really appreciate Empires and Puzzles for that. And if you want to help me on that journey, go ahead and hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.